complete history of communism. This is Communism, Part 5. All of you must be well familiar with and have memorized all the information contained in Parts 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4, so you know all about the Russian Revolution, communism in China, all that sort of thing, which brings me right up to this very topical event, current event, information about communism in North Korea, and it goes like this. Korea is a mid-sized land, surrounded by China and Russia and Japan. A humble nation, surrounded by three mighty forces. Long ago was known as the Hermit Kingdom, isolated from the world but self-sufficient. Korea had its own language and inventions and resources. But when the rest of the world reached colonial times, Europe and Japan both wanted that colonial prize. East and West wanted Korea. Who would win? It was Japan that annexed Korea in 1910. And life under the Japanese was cruel, but Korean landlords and police helped them rule. The vicious Japanese imperialists and the richest Koreans all collaborated. And the first Korean communist was a woman in Russia, Alexandra Kim. She was killed by the Japanese, but some Koreans joined in. Maybe communism could get rid of the Japanese conquerors they all hated. And the Korean Communist Party was just a few people at best. But one was Kim Song-ju, a teenage student who they would arrest. And when he got out, he fled and joined Mao's Red Chinese Army. Kim fought in China, not Korea, but he fought the Japanese. So a legend spread back in Korea about this Korean army commander fighting the Japanese in China. Kim Il-sung, meaning become the sun, was the new name of this star. And when Kim was the last commander left alive in his section, and the Japanese had his troops down to just a fraction, he led his last men to safety across a river to the USSR. And so the next chapter in Kim Il-sung's life began. He left Mao's army and was retrained as a Soviet army man. He fought Stalin's army all through World War II, and when the Japanese were crushed, it was Korea's dream come true. But like Germany, after the Nazis were finished, Korea was in question with the Japanese vanished. Would it be the communist East or the capitalist West that would give Korea direction? So just like the new East and West Germany, a similar decision fell to cut Korea in half along the 38th parallel. The North to Stalin's Russia and the South to America's protection. And Stalin picked Kim Il-sung to be the leader up in the North. Sigmund Lee was the South's leader that America put forth. And through the late 40s, there was a big propaganda fight. Both called the other one a puppet, and both of them were sort of right. Well, one big problem with North Korea, to be fair. There were very few Korean communists even there. The leaders in the North were mostly foreigners from China and from the Soviet Union. But then on the other hand, one big problem with South Korea, to be fair, was America put back in power all the rich Koreans there. All those bad ones who had collaborated with Japan came right back to rule them. And another irony is that Korea did have its own indigenous communist party, but they were based down in the South where they just couldn't get things started. Meanwhile, both leaders were like pawns hoping to be kings. Both wanted permission to attack the other and conquer everything. In 1950, Kim finally got Stalin's permission. He sent the North Korean troops across the border on a conquering mission. The South Koreans fled, just like Kim hoped was going to happen. But Kim underestimated how much America was committed. He thought the U.S. wouldn't send troops to Korea, but we did. So it was his turn to flee back north, because it was America's excuse to see him flattened. But then it was quickly America's turn for a disastrous turnabout. We hadn't thought the giant communist Chinese army would come out. So the so-called Korean War was really Americans versus Chinese, with Korea in the crossfire of this mini World War III. Well, we reinforced with new technology like napalm, but the Chinese seemed endless. There was talk of using an A-bomb, and for 3 awful years there was slaughter and neither side went in. So China and America both backed off because they were even, but with millions of Koreans dead and cities destroyed for no reason, the country ended up divided just the same as it had been at the war's beginning. And Kim still wanted more power, but still needed Russia and China's help. The only rivals he could get rid of were Korean communists themselves. He told everyone to believe in Juche, his philosophy of self-reliance, and he did improve North Korea's economy and science. So North Korea prospered for a time, but by the 1970s it started to decline. And old Kim picked his son, Kim Jong-il, to lead in case of his departure. And North Korea even started nuclear power programs, but the economy just kept slowing and slowing. And in the early 90s, when the Soviet Union collapsed, North Korea lost their most important partner. And just like a metaphor for the growing problems of his past, old Kim grew a neck tumor that had to crop from photographs. In fact, the tumor got so large it got in fistfights with his kid. Okay, that didn't really happen, but it would have been crazy if it did. Nowadays, North Korea is a hermit kingdom once again, ruled by Kim Jong-il and his army men, isolated from the world, but even worse than it ever had been in the past. But if North Korea can get rid of its nuclear programs tomorrow, it could still become an example for the rest of the world to follow. Maybe trade sanctions will lift, the people will rise and make their own fate at last. Which brings me right into part 6, Communism in Cuba, but I won't do that this evening.